Well, hello. Welcome to the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, in for Todd this week, who's away on vacation. Very big thank you to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for keeping things in an orderly fashion as we roll through the work week. Doesn't this seem like it's been a very long work week? It certainly has for me. Well, it looks like the first half of the forecast is looking pretty good for the weekend, though. We got sun today. I know it's kind of hiding behind the clouds right now, but we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud today. Some sun tomorrow. I think the high today is in the double digits. So it looks like it's going to be a nice day after all that fog and rain and snow and everything else that we saw this week. Saturday looking like it's going to be a half-decent day again with some more sunshine, at least for the most part of the day. And temperatures almost at the 10-degree mark. I think it's 7 or so. Then things start to change on Saturday night and into Sunday. We get more of those April showers, as they say. But those April showers, of course, bring with them May flowers, right? Huge. Oh, my goodness. Huge game tonight down at Scotia Bank Centre for the Halifax Mooseheads. They'll host the Voltigeur at 7 o'clock. That series tied at 2 games each. And with games 6 and 7 in Drummondville, it is super important to win tonight. The Mr. Lou pregame show goes at 6:30. Puck will drop at 7 o'clock. We'll take a closer look at tonight's game with Garreth MacDonald, who will join us in hour 3 today to set things up and to get his thoughts. And very quickly, just a sidebar, if you've always been curious as to what magic Garreth MacDonald weaves here, I mean, you been listening to him for years. I know I've been listening to him for years and have had the opportunity to work alongside him. So I know exactly the hard work and dedication that Garreth puts into his broadcast each and every day. But the Mooseheads and their video program, Moose Tracks, have done a special on Garreth, a focus on what it looks like from their perspective when Garreth does what he does and does it so very well. So if you've always been curious, maybe to see what it looks like when Garreth is doing his thing, here's your opportunity. I think that is available on the Halifax Mooseheads website. Gas prices are up this morning, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why. The Nova Scotia Energy Board, which used to be the UARB, sets the prices. Sets the price, of course. Oil prices have down. I think they've been down most of the week. They're down substantially the last 2 days. Carbon tax was zeroed, for lack of a better term. The world economy is in pre-fall. But the prices here in Nova Scotia, gasoline prices anyway, are up this morning. Diesel prices didn't change, but gas prices are up this morning. I chatted with listener John this morning on the email, as puzzled as I am on this. The Energy Board in the past have told me and told us that prices are set off a 7-day average but with the changes earlier this week, right, with the carbon tax zeroing, I won't say removal because I know that angers many. I really don't understand it. I just don't get it. I'm seeing stories out of other places in the country that prices are coming down. Perhaps officials can provide a little more clarity on this, given that we're in sort of almost unprecedented times. I think this is one of those occasions, and we've talked about this in the past, I think this is one of those occasions where regulation in Nova Scotia is really hurting us, to be honest. Right? Regulation was put there to protect the Nova Scotia consumer against these big price fluctuations. You remember the old days when gas used to be set at a price in the morning and then would change at noon and then would change again when you were driving home? That is what they tell me, that gasoline regulation was brought in our province and in New Brunswick and elsewhere in PEI. But I think this is one of those occasions where locking in a price for a week is really going to harm consumers this time around. Now, we know there's a mechanism that's built into the gas price regulation, and I know you're all yelling at your radio right now. Well, Dan, they'll just bring in the interrupter clause. And I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think that I expect to see an interrupter clause in the coming days just based on what oil did yesterday and what it's doing this morning. But it's still a puzzle to me why gasoline prices went up at midnight. I just don't understand. Might be something you want to talk about a little bit later today. Speaking of the markets, yesterday, the worst day since 2020, since the pandemic for the markets. I think it was the grand total was what? The Dow Jones was down 1,600 points, and the TSX in Toronto was down almost 1,000 points, almost 4% in value. Just a very quick look, and sometimes I often read the futures markets with a bit of a grain of salt. I know it's an implied open, and things change and money starts to move right when the bell rings and that kind of thing. But with the Chinese announcing their counter tariffs to Trump's counter tariffs, I'm not even sure what counter we're in anymore. But the market this morning in pre-trade, the Dow is down another 2.5%. It's about just over 1,000 points down right now. The S&P 500 is down 132 points. That's 2.5%. The NASDAQ down almost 500 points. That's almost 2.5%. So it doesn't look like yesterday was the end of the reaction to the Liberation Day tariffs from the President of the United States. I was almost afraid when I went home after the show yesterday to open up my retirement portfolio. Did you look yesterday? Did you take a look at it? Or as I've had conversations throughout the day yesterday and today, some are just saying, I'm not even going to look because it was just that bad. My savings certainly took a hit yesterday, and I imagine that many of you either feel the same or know for sure that it did take a hit. Well, part of the focus today on the program will be, of course, on tariffs and the economy. But in the traditions of Rick Howe, today's open hour is entirely up to you. I'll try to keep my trap shut as much as I can. I know it's not easy. And I'm going to let you, our fantastic listeners, guide where we go Vanessa's laughing, where we go during the open hour today. The Friday free-for-all should be just that. It should be a free-for-all, keeping things, of course, PG, right? And we have to keep things appropriate for our listeners, right? But I get criticized, and I know Todd's been criticized, I know Vanessa has been criticized off the air, that we focus on one subject too much or another subject, and we don't touch a subject enough. And, we're too focused on what's going on in the United States, and that's not Canada. We live in Canada, even though we've been down the road about how this thing is affecting everybody. So at 11 o'clock today, right after the news, we're going to open up the telephone lines for the Friday Free-for-All, and it's up to you. It's going to be truly up to you where we go. And I'm very curious to see what subject matters and which direction we take the open hour. As I've been saying all week, and I will continue to say, it is my most favorite hour of the week, and I am very much looking forward to it. Outside of the tariffs, there's other things that have been going on in the last couple of days, and we've seen a number of announcements coming out of the provincial government, and some of them have been talking about supporting people that are victims of gender-based violence. There's been a couple of announcements over the last few weeks. We're very pleased to kick off the show today with a special guest, the Minister of Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the Status of Women, and that's Leah Martin, and she's on the line with us. Minister Martin, good morning.
Good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me.
It's weird times, right? And these are all very important initiatives and important to Nova Scotians, but it's kind of all getting wrapped up and lost in all of the crazy going on in the world, is it not?
Well, I mean, I would like to think that it's not getting missed in all of that's what's being wrapped up, because it is such a time of immense change and uncertainty. And so I see this as a bit of a glimmer of hope for many people. We've known that these issues have been here in Nova Scotia for quite some time. If you're connected in community, if you have tea with your friends and your networks. I mean, these have been long-standing issues here in Nova Scotia, but to see the investment that's here and to see the changes and the adaptations and the improvements, I think as much as there is so much that's heavy right now in the world, and there is so much going on between the United States and across the world, that I think that here at home, any opportunities that we have to pause and recognize there's more work to do, but look at where we've come from and look at where we're going. I think I don't want to sound like too much of a positive Patty in this moment, because there is so much more work to be done. But I think it's really important to recognize that and to talk about it.
Couple of announcements over the last week or so, some money for the Safer Spaces program, some money for the December 6th fund, dealing with human trafficking, dealing with organizations that help women that are fleeing violence, some money announced as well for Indigenous, Black, and African Nova Scotian survivors of gender-based violence. Minister, the question when we start to see these announcements that come out is this new money? Is this in addition to what's been announced before, or is this part of the bigger package that was announced around the budget?
That's a really great question. And I would say that this was an all-of-government lift. So I really like, first of all, well done for being well-versed on all your notes and all of the information that's going on, because it is so much and it touches on so many different, not just departments, but far-reaching areas in our communities. So, you mentioned the YWCA fund, the December 6th program. What an amazing program that is. So, that program meets people where they're at a time of incredible need, and really helps bridge the gap between that urgent need for some financial support, whether it could be, bridging the gap with damage deposits, phone or internet bills or cell phone, transportation, leaving an abusive situation. So it's such an important fund, and, we really appreciate the work of the YWCA and the voices from community that helps to, really inform how we can really meet the needs in those moments when people need it the most. So I want to thank you for recognizing that program and the work that YWCA is doing on the ground, and as well as transition houses. So transition houses are obviously an incredible refuge for women and children fleeing intimate partner violence and gender-based violence. So we did announce $17.9 million in funding for transition houses. And I would say in my first few weeks coming in as a new minister, this is one of my most, critical meetings that we really wanted to have right away. And so hearing the needs and meeting some of those needs, is a bit of, I wouldn't say a full breath of fresh air, but I do think it does feel good to be able to hear from community and hear from the service providers. And, the Premier was in that meeting. There were many ministers in that meeting. And, we listened to the voices of community. We listened to those service providers. And then what I think is a really beautiful part is that, we across government essentially lifted up the couches and looked under cushions to find every quarter, nickel or dime that we could pull together to, again, address those needs. So that was the year-end funding that you're referencing. So some of it was a planned and historic, year-on-year historic investment, and some of it, the later stage investment funding that you referenced there at the end, was that collective all-of-government approach. So there's actually $103 million across government that you see in many different departments that goes to address the recommendations from the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence and intimate partner violence as an epidemic. So, to answer your question, it's from my position with Status of Women, we hold one department's responsibilities, and we're in a really wonderful and powerful position central to government that we can collaborate across all government departments and look at, within labor, skills, and immigration, how do we address intimate partner violence and gender-based violence within education and justice and opportunities in social development. So really, it's an across-government approach, and I think that is very encouraging and very motivating and inspiring for the future for Nova Scotia.
We've seen the announcements, Minister. We see the government, since the new government has been sworn in, is it making a difference? And the reason why I ask that is we see the numbers and we see the press releases and so on and so forth. But as you mentioned, $103 million. Now that's a lot of money. Nova Scotians, I think, want to know if it is working and if it is making a difference, or perhaps maybe is it too early to know exactly what benefit those dollars are having?
What a great question. And you're absolutely right. It is a lot of money. And you're right again. Investments, we know, do take time. But when we put investments into things such as prevention and early intervention, we really do take that recommendation from the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. So I know people like to hear that when they're right, but you were right. Investments will take time. This isn't an overnight problem that an overnight solution can fix. But I'm encouraged by programs such as Guys Work. Guys Work is a prevention and early intervention program in schools that started off at 13 schools and now has expanded to 60 schools for school-age children between grades 6 and 9. To talk about traditional masculinity, to find safer space to talk about their well-being. And that's something that, a space from growing up here in Nova Scotia, we didn't have when I was growing. I didn't know of safe spaces like that for men and boys to have. And I'm raising 2 young boys here now. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. So knowing that there's new opportunities to learn this before you're off in the world, finding your way and going into the workforce is very encouraging. So I know there's so much more work to be done, but and I think, it's important to share too, is that my role as the Minister for Status of Women is to listen and to hear the feedback from the community, hear feedback from the service providers, and then look to identify gaps, whether they're big or small, and then work with our teams to try to fill those gaps as best we can. And I feel like we are doing exactly that. And there's more work to be done until this isn't an epidemic in Nova Scotia. And, as we've seen from previous, pandemics, they're not an overnight thing. And it requires an all-hands-on-deck approach, and it requires all of us working together. And not just government, it's all of society, it's all of our province. But as long as we have these conversations, and thank you again for having us on the show, because I think the more that we can communicate out to Nova Scotians that there are services, there are programs there that can provide help. There's 211 out there that we encourage people to reach out to. There's lots that we can do.
Minister Martin, we're out of time. I appreciate yours.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
That is Minister Leah Martin of the Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the status of women, on the money and supports for gender-based violence. We're going to stop down, take our first break on this, the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. When we come back, the leader of the official opposition in Nova Scotia, NDP Leader Claudia Chender, your guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes.
X.
Welcome back. This is the Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We're very pleased to welcome to the show the leader of the official opposition in Nova Scotia, the leader of the NDP, Claudia Chender. Claudia, happy Friday.
Thanks, Dan. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
You were on the line listening to the minister's response when I asked, $103 million being earmarked for gender-based violence in Nova Scotia and if it was working. And she said, well, these things take time. Your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts on the government's approach to addressing this epidemic in our province?
Well, I think after a lot of really heavy lifting and hard work from advocates and a lot of reports, which the minister referenced, we're finally starting to see movement. So we're glad about that. But, I think it's been hard. It's been hard. I think the money that the minister referenced that was in our budget actually was unchanged year over year. And we've seen a number of gender-based violence episodes, ending in death, murders in our province in the last 6 months. So certainly we have a lot of work to do, but we are starting to see a more comprehensive approach. We're starting to see that core funding for those organizations. And I was really actually happy to hear the minister reference the work that's happening around in schools around healthy relationships. I think that's something we're still looking to see more of, because at the end of the day, this is really about what kind of communities do we want to live in? What kind of province do we want to live in? How do we treat each other? And of course, kids learn that in school. That's where they're socialized. So we've got work to do for sure. But, absolutely, we are glad to finally see the government, after denying that gender-based violence was an epidemic just a few years ago, start to correct course on that.
Claudia, are these important issues, and this is probably one of the most important issues in the province, getting lost in all of the, and I said it earlier this morning, all the crazy that's happening with our trade relationship with the United States and the economy and those kind of things? Are we in danger of losing Nova Scotia's attention on this as we deal with these bigger issues? Or I shouldn't say bigger issues, but new shiny issues.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think absolutely people's attention, quite rightly, has been riveted to what's happening south of the border and to the impact of those policies on us and our workers and our businesses. But I would go back to, what I was just saying, which is at the end of the day, it's making us really think about what kind of province we want to live in and how we support each other. So if there's a silver lining of all that craziness that's happening, it's people are paying more attention. And so they're paying attention to our economy. They're paying attention to politics. We just came through a legislative session where we really felt civic engagement in the political process in a way that we haven't in years. People were paying attention. I think the government was trying to get a few things done that they thought they could kind of do under the radar, and they couldn't because people are not. They're awoken. They're nervous. They understand the power of government and what can happen if they don't pay attention. And so, yes, in a certain way, some headlines move to the back burner. But on the other hand, I think we're realizing the degree to which we need to start focusing on being self-sufficient and resilient. So that's everything from food to business to, those social issues like gender-based violence, like equity and inclusion. We need to be able to support each other because that's really, at the end of the day, I think who we are. That's what Nova Scotians pride themselves on, being a welcoming community that takes care of each other. And so that's being put to the test. And I think Nova Scotians are doing really well.
We're almost out of time, Claudia. I know these segments fly by. We originally were going to talk about tariffs. We'll still do that. We saw some of the countermeasures nationally. We heard from the Premier yesterday about the way that he wants to handle it. Your thoughts on the way that the Houston government is handling this situation, at least in the hours after this thing blew up?
Look, we need a Team Canada approach and we need a Team Nova Scotia approach. And so to the extent that, we hear the government doing that, we are supportive. And so I'm glad to see our Premier working with other premiers collaboratively across the country. I think that's what we need. I'm glad to see him working collaboratively with Ottawa. But we also, are going to continue to be looking for more details as we understand more what yesterday's announcement actually means for us, as we understand what it means for our traditional sectors, in particular, fisheries and farming and forestry and our business community and our workers. We're going to need more details, of course, on how the government is going to make sure. The other piece, though, and to your point earlier about things getting lost in the shuffle, is that one thing that seems certain is that we are looking at some stiff economic headwinds, no matter what happens. And so that means we need to redouble our commitment to ensuring that everyone has housing that they can afford and that people can rely on their work, that they make a decent wage. All of those things that, we have been advocating for forever are that much more important. And so, we just came through an election in November. It feels like years ago, but it isn't, where, one of the number one things was housing. And that remains a huge issue in Nova Scotia. Renters are in extraordinarily precarious positions. That's a third of people in this province who rent. We have not figured out how to ensure that they are able to be securely in their homes and know that they can afford afford their rent next month or next year, that they can stay where they are. We need to close that fixed term lease loophole. We need to figure out how to keep renters in their homes, and we need to start building homes that people can actually afford. So we put forward lots of proposals on that, and that's something that I think we're going to need to start redoubling our efforts on.
Claudia, we're out of time. I appreciate yours, and have a happy weekend.
Thanks so much, Dan.
That is the leader of the opposition in Nova Scotia and the leader of the Nova Scotia New Democrats. That is Claudia Chender. We're going to stop down. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the world and what's going on with the markets. It's not nice. When we come back, we'll take a national overview with our weekly chat with Tim Powers from Summa Strategies and Abacus Data. You saw him in the minutes after on television reacting to that. Now we'll dig into some of the things he said and some of the things that have changed in the last 24 hours. You're listening to the Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Aalders. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Happy Friday to one and all as we work towards the end of what has been a week, has it not? Even if you're not really concerning yourself with what's happening in the United States and are just trying to shut that noise out and are just trying to go about your daily routine, I mean, it's near impossible now, right? It really is near impossible now. It has been a long week, and it has been a quite stressful week for some. It's been a quite tiring week for others. And our next guest, you can hear him on VOCM in the beautiful province of Newfoundland and Labrador. You can see him on the CBC on Power and Politics. And more importantly, and most importantly, you can hear him here every week with Todd and this week with me, and that is our good friend Tim Powers. Tim, how are you?
Dan, I'm good. You know what? I think Todd is hiding and shivering. It's not a holiday. He knows that our two teams are going to face off in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And as is Todd's want, with the poor choices he makes with teams, except one, that being the New York Yankees, he's just cowering. I know that's what's happening.
Maple
He's,
Leafs,
of course, a Leaf fan, and I'm, I guess, a Senator supporter.
Leafs Sens first round, that is something we haven't seen in many, many years, and I think it probably will be good for hockey in this country, won't it?
Battle of Ontario. It'll be great, too, if the Canadians get in, because, of course, in our neck of the woods, Atlantic Canada, lots of Leafs and Canadians fans. I hope they all do it. Todd and I are going to have a bet. He will lose yet another bet, but that's okay. We do it because we're sporting fellows.
That's the way it is. Tim, I saw you on Power and Politics on, was it Wednesday now? I can't even remember what day of the week it is anymore. With the immediate reaction to the Liberation Day tariffs. I mean, it almost sounds, just wrong to ask the question, what are your thoughts on them? Because I think everybody's kind of united on it, right?
Well, Dan, I have to tell you, I think it was, I was driving my son to a soccer practice last night, and thankfully he had his headphones on because one point, I forget, I think it was CT Bell Media, had a clip from Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, who's been front and center in all of this, and Lutnick's message was, the world needs to trust Donald Trump. He knows what he's doing. He's studied global economics for 35 years. I may have uttered a few expletives and nearly put the car in the ditch, but thankfully my son was not able to hear it. But these guys think they're right. It's nuts.
Mario, he said yesterday, the President of the United States getting on to his corporate jet and flying to his own golf course to spend the weekend golfing, said that the markets are going to boom. Well, they're booming all right, but not the way that I think he thinks they're going to.
Yeah, if booming in his mind is hearing somebody crash and burn on the floor, well, he's got that boom. I haven't seen, well, they're just opening now, but certainly yesterday, oh my goodness, what a slaughter. And you know what? That affects just about everybody, anybody who's got a pension. They're all likely held at some way or another on the market. Anybody who's got some savings, they put into mutual funds. Like, he's hurting people quite significantly. It's slightly removed, yes. But look at what's happening in Ontario, Dan. Stellantis shutting down their plant for 2 weeks, the big auto manufacturer, because of the auto tariffs, more likely to come, like this is going to happen in Michigan. I don't know what good he thinks he's doing.
Let's focus on domestic politics for a minute and
Sure.
the reaction to these tariffs, these auto tariffs, and the maintaining of the steel and aluminum tariffs. I asked Lori Turnbull this earlier this week from a conservative perspective. Is it difficult for Mr. Poilievre to try and break through and to sway voters when this is the ballot box question and they're pretty close in their way that they would approach it?
Yeah, well, just look at the last 2 days, and I had Lori on yesterday too because she's such a great analyst. And look, what Pierre Poilievre on Wednesday, I guess, Liberation Day, to his credit, from a political management perspective, did have the first event of the day, 9:30 in Toronto, the financial capital, arguably, of the country. He had Caroline Mulroney, senior minister in Doug Ford's government, and equally important, daughter of Brian Mulroney, the father of the free trade agreement in Canada, with him. You know, he maybe got till 11:30 or 12 before it all switched back to what Mark Carney was doing. Mark Carney came off the campaign trail, became the prime minister again, as anyone who is campaigning, who's in that role, should do in these circumstances. And until basically today, Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh, for that matter, hard for them to get into the news cycle, other than the events that they're doing. And they both have policies out there, to be fair to them. But look, it's a bit like the election we had here in Ontario, Dan, where Doug Ford made the election about Trump and standing up to Trump. Whether we like it or not, that's what this election is. And Poilievre, that wasn't his first choice for the ballot question, to be fair. He's trying to find his way back in, but it's hard because the natural reaction of all of us in the media is to listen to the people who currently run the country and start there and get reaction elsewhere. So it's tough to get in.
National Post headline on their Twitter page today said, and I'm quoting here, with U.S. President Donald Trump seeming to back off on his threats against Canada, the Liberals may have lost their single most potent campaign issue. Is that true? Do you think that now that we're not being bombarded with 51st State and Governor, well, Trudeau at the time, or Governor Carney and this threat of annexation, do you think that it will be easier now for Mr. Poilievre to make up the lost ground in the polls?
Look, I've been a fan over the years of the National Post. Important to this point to remind people they're owned by an American hedge fund. Important to point out that they're, certainly have an interest, as other people do. Everybody has an editorial voice in getting Pierre Poilievre elected. But last week, don't forget, their big story was Mark Carney's done because he allegedly plagiarized his Oxford doctoral thesis. So, long way of saying, I think they're jumping the shark there on that. It's hard to imagine that somehow there will be a calm over the next 3 weeks and Donald Trump will move away from the minds of Canadians who are concerned. On the front lines, arguably, if the tariffs hold over the next 3 weeks in communities like Windsor and Ingersoll, Ontario, excuse me, and elsewhere, people are going to feel it. And no, you're wrong, National Post.
The other issues, Tim, the affordability issues, the taxation, the housing, those kind of things. I know that all of the party leaders have been trying to shift the focus onto those, but to be absolutely blunt, does the average Canadian really care at this point?
Well, I think, again, if you look at data, Dan, you'll see, and this is why Poilievre says, although you're starting to see a bit of a pivot more on Trump's side, why Poilievre says, and he said it last night in an interview with RDI in Quebec, that, he's not making any apologies for focusing on affordability issues. People younger than you and I, Gen Z, millennials, they still have serious concerns, as they should, about their own economic well-being. And particularly in the case of Gen Z and younger millennials, they were the people who were strongly backing Pierre Poilievre. I think depends on the poll, still leading there, but not to the degree that he was. If he's going to win, he's got to stay on those issues to a pretty consistent degree, because to that group, they're less frightened about Donald Trump. You and I and others who aren't quite boomers, we'll say Todd's a boomer. You and I aren't boomers. But, our 45-plus crowd, let's be helpful there. We're probably more concerned about Trump because we've seen and, we have a bit more financial security, and we probably have a bit more experience watching global politics, and we've never seen anything like this, so it's scary.
A little less financial security after yesterday on the markets. That being said,
a lot less. Yeah.
That being said, the big debates are coming up, right? The debates, the English debate, the French debate. Tim, in your opinion, will the election be won or lost on these made-for-TV events?
I mean, the only time we can argue that it really was right was 1984 when Brian Mulroney said famously to incumbent prime minister who had just been elected and come into office, John Turner, that, sir, you had a choice, and that was about the Senate appointments, of course, that Pierre Trudeau made. I think they will. I think they're most important, Todd, for the Conservatives. I think this is Pierre Poilievre's next big chance, because it's going to be tough, I still think, to get a bigger audience on the issues and the policies that he's talking about until that moment. Mark Carney just wants to hold his own. Pierre Poilievre will probably work very hard to be seen as the winner of both those debates, and hope in doing that he'll be able to cut into the Liberals in Ontario and Quebec, because in Ontario and Quebec, no offense to the most important region in the country, Atlantic Canada, that's where the election's won or lost. The Liberal fortunes are way up in Atlantic Canada. I think the Conservatives, who were looking to probably win the majority of seats in Atlantic Canada, are still going to struggle with that. But, can the debates make a difference for Poilievre in Ontario and Quebec and get him back in the game?
Tim, is always a pleasure, sure. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll chat again next week.
All right. You take care, Dan. Bye.
That is our good friend Tim Powers from Abacus Data and Summa Strategies. The auto sector, Tim talked about it. We've talked about it for a couple of days. The hardest hits so far by these tariffs. We've seen plant closures already. There's lots of consternation that there are more to come. A conversation after the break with the president of Unifor, Lana Payne, will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in a minute. Welcome back to The Todd Veinotte Show. Well, we don't have a car plant here, but we certainly have automotive industry parts and tires and those kind of things in our part of the world, and these tariffs that were imposed by the President of the United States, particularly on the automotive industry, steel and aluminum as well, on was it Wednesday now? I can't even remember what day of the week it is. Anyway, are far-reaching and will have an impact. I mean, look what they're doing to the markets. But the auto sector, obviously, at least to this point, has been the hardest hit, and we're very pleased. I know she's very busy to welcome the president of Unifor, Lana Payne, back to the program. Lana, how are you?
I'm well, Dan, as well as can be expected. It's good to join you today.
We all watched I've been calling it the spectacle at the Rose Garden when the president made these announcements, and I took away a number of things from it, obviously, with all of it was like one hit after another that the president was unveiling. But one of the things that I saw, and I immediately thought of Unifor members in Canada was their brethren from the United Auto Workers, the president bringing one of their spokespeople right up onto the stage and telling everybody how great these tariffs were going to be for the industry. How does that play in the union movement in Canada? Do the auto workers in Canada see that and go, hey, wait a minute, I thought we were all in this together?
Yes, I can tell you I've heard, Dan, from a lot of our members who, do not understand this reaction or this policy that the UAW has taken on tariffs. I mean, we have a pretty good understanding of the industry in Canada. We know how interconnected it is across North America. and these tariffs weighing down on two ends of the industry, Mexico and Canada, will cause a breaking point as well in the United States. You can just picture the weight on the two ends of the supply chain. There is just no way for it not to have an impact in the U.S. In a number of ways on auto workers' jobs in the U.S. We saw that yesterday when Stellantis announced the temporary pause in production at its Windsor assembly plant, as well as a plant in Mexico, and that impacted jobs in the United States because we have auto parts workers in the U.S. that supply parts to both of these plants, and vice versa. We supply parts in Canada to many of the plants in the United States. In fact, those plants rely on about 50% of their parts coming from Canada and Mexico. So there's no way that you can have an impact on one part of the industry in terms of how it is these tariffs can be costed out, how it is that companies are going to swallow them or pass on the costs or both, and not expect for there to be a break in the supply chain. And we're likely to see more of this.
I'm sure your union locals and the leadership within Unifor have been in contact with those affected members at the Stellantis plant. I know I've seen some interviews with some of them in the parking lot during a shift change yesterday, and everybody is extremely worried, I would imagine.
Yeah, all across the industry, Dan, in Windsor, which of course is a massive auto hub for Canada, but many other communities as well. I spent a good bit of time with our members in Oshawa a week or so ago. I've had numerous meetings with our auto leadership across the auto assembly and auto parts part of our union, and of course I'm meeting with them again today because we have to watch in terms of how it is the many companies that we deal with, not just on the assembly side, the automakers, but in the parts side, and how they're going to be reacting to these tariffs. We've had one case of a parts company trying to move dies across the border. And this is the kind of disruption we're going to see. I will say to you, one kind of bright light in all of this is the response that our Prime Minister had yesterday. They were, his approach was to have a very strategic retaliatory response to the United States. I would call it probably also measured. But the two key parts were the revenues raised from these retaliatory tariffs. He was clear would go to support auto workers and their facilities and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect this industry during the trade war. And secondly, how the tariffs will be applied. If you have production in Canada, if you're building in Canada, you are going to be exempt from these tariffs. And the same is true that if you decide to shift production, that will have a negative impact on you. And this is something that our union had been fighting for as a measure to make sure we were doing everything possible to make it difficult on these companies to move and shift jobs out of Canada to south of the border, because, of course, that has been Donald Trump's plan from the beginning.
Lana, we know Stellantis was first. It was just hours after the president's announcement. I'm sure you've had discussions with the other plants in the country. Is there any rumblings of other closures as we move into next week and the weeks beyond?
Yeah, my concern is, and of course I'm in constant contact with the automakers. We've had any number of meetings in the last couple of months after the inauguration, and actually even before for me, because this was a policy that we knew the Trump administration would be implemented. He was pretty clear about that during the election campaign. After November, we were very worried that we were going to be getting these tariffs on auto. And of course, we've seen them on steel and aluminum, which also has an impact on the auto industry. Steel and aluminum are very large inputs for the manufacturing of vehicles in our country. And in aerospace, too. This is the challenge. It's not just one sector that's being hit here. And we know that the auto sector, given the size of the manufacturing footprint that it has in Ontario, but also we've seen it grown in Quebec and other places in the last couple of years, that it has what I would call an outsized impact on the community when you have both ways. When it grows, it has a very good impact on the community. And when we see a contraction, the same is true. The number of jobs tied to this industry are quite significant. But what we have been saying to them and what we need to do right now is to watch to make sure we're not getting changes in production plans, changes in, shifts, changes in, slowdowns, all of that. That is key, that we're keeping on top of it. But I do know each of these automakers right now are in the process of assessing what this tariff means to their production, what it means to their supply chain, how they can grapple with it. And in the process of doing that, we potentially will see more decisions like we saw out of Stellantis as they tried to also push back to make sure, the tariffs get removed. So this is the ultimate goal here is to make sure in the end that the tariffs are gone.
Lana, we've only got about 60 seconds left, but I think this is an important question. The President of the United States pretty adamant that he won't be backing down from these tariffs. Do you believe that? Or do you think that we can convince Donald Trump to back off on these tariffs?
He has declared economic war on most of the world right now. And we have seen the reaction to that. The markets are tanking. The economic indicators are very bad, including those among Americans. And I believe in the end, it'll be this kind of damage that he's creating that will have an impact on future decision making, and we'll have to force him to do things differently.
Lana, as always, a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dan.
That is Lana Payne, the president of Unifor, the union that represents auto workers in this country. It had to have just stuck in their craw. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of talk back and forth about patriotism and all of that stuff. But to have the United Auto Workers with the yellow hard hats that they had on, standing up, actually the president bringing one of their spokespeople to the podium and him thanking the president and saying that this was a dawn of new industry in the United States and that he's from Detroit and that Detroit's going to boom. And it had to just, for Canadian auto workers that are represented by Unifor, that had to hurt. We're going to stop down. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the news. On the other side of it, it is time for the Friday Free-for-All. As I mentioned off the top of the program today, this one is for you. You get to set the agenda. I'm going to try, with a smile, to keep my mouth shut and let you guide the conversation. Whatever it is you want to talk about, all fair game. Of course, we have to keep it PG. But if you want to talk about whatever it is on your mind, this is your opportunity. We'll open up those telephone lines right now. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The Friday Free-for-All after the news.
Thanks.
Welcome back. Thanks to Blake for updating us on what's going on. I think we had a story that said that the economy lost 35,000 jobs in the last reporting period. That's a bit scary considering what's going on. It's just it seems to be blow after blow after blow. Anyway, welcome to the Friday Free-for-All. This is your opportunity to talk about whatever it is you used to talk about. Back in the day when I did my show in New Brunswick, I used to do this on Fridays. I find it to be a little bit medicinal. It gives you a chance to get whatever it is off your chest as you head into the weekend, and sometimes it can make you feel better. Sometimes it makes you feel worse, but most of the time it makes you feel better. So the rules are, there aren't a whole lot of rules, but we also have to remember that this is radio, and we do have to keep things, PG. We do need to keep things within the bounds of good taste. But I'll do my very best to try and get as many callers as we can on the air, and try and maybe keep my comments to a minimum today. 902-405. Vanessa's sweating. 902-405-6000. It's not because of the hour. It's just, it's warm in here today. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's go right to the phones and welcome Eric to the program. Eric, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. Yeah, a little bit frustrating and hard to absolve what's going on. I heard the news about the economy and everything else, 35,000 jobs. But I like to ask I don't know, this question's ever come up, and I don't think it's a stupid question. Do we need the states to depend upon our style of living? I mean, can we negotiate with other countries? I mean, if we prove to him that we don't need him, and the people in the states start getting a little peeved off, he may give in. I mean, it's only a matter of time. They say time is a killer, and I think that's what it's going to take. But I ask again, do we actually need him?
I would think we probably do, Eric. And the only reason why I say that, it's a hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of economy there, and for us to start to rely on what we import across that border every day from Europe or from Asia or from wherever, this transport cost alone would be prohibitive, right? But I don't know, maybe somebody out there smarter in the economy than I am.
Well, I think time is going to catch up to him, and he'll eventually have to, come to his senses, because right now I like to have some of the stuff that he's smoking, because he's just talking, they're just fighting like kids, back and forth, and it's not getting anywhere. So I don't know. You sit back here and you listen to these things that happen every day, and it's very irritating, and I think time is going to be the factor here, and that's the way I feel.
Eric, appreciate the call, sir. Have a great weekend.
You too, Dan.
902-405-6000. That easy. Just dial the numbers and join the program. 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Roman to the program. Roman, how are you?
Good. I'm good, Dan. How are you today?
I am well. What's on your mind?
Wanted to speak about the federal election like everybody else.
Sure.
And I'll tell you that I'm going to be voting for Poilievre. And I've been thinking, obviously, the tariffs are massive. But we have to remember that at some point we have to go back to kind of trade. So I would suggest to people, if you were planning on not voting Liberal before all this started, why would you vote Liberal now? Like, the policies aren't going to be any different. If you hated what happened for 10 years or whatever, why do you think that Carney is going to make it? Say, well, he's going to negotiate better with Trump. How do we know that? He may be worldly and whatever, but he's not a politician. So far, he hasn't had to campaign because we've obviously been doing this tariff stuff. We don't know if Poilievre can negotiate with Trump, but we don't know if Carney can either. So I would suggest that people should kind of sit back and say, okay, I wasn't going to vote for Liberals. Now, why am I going to do that now? What has actually changed other than the tariffs, which is a massive thing? But as I say, we have to, at some point, be running our own country and policies and housing. The immigration problem is still there. The housing problem is still there. Affordability, the whole deal. I almost kind of got bamboozled myself thinking, maybe I should vote for Carney. But then I was thinking, no, that doesn't make any sense to me. So, as I say, I hope people are thinking of that.
Roman, appreciate it, sir.
Okay.
902-405-6000 is the number, 902-405-6000. It is the Friday Free-for-All. Chat about whatever it is you want to talk about. And we welcome Bill to the show. Bill, how are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Good to hear your voice this morning. How are you?
Oh, great.
Good.
Well, I wouldn't say great, for an old guy at 95, and you gotta have some allowances for things.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I started off wanting to talk about the flag, but I want to chuck this thing in about the states. There's a little bit of a talk here about, well, let's get rid of the states and we'll get another neighbor to help us out, European Union or whatever. That's a big mistake. I mean, we can't. We have to depend on the United States to protect us. Okay, we don't have practically nothing in the way of Army, Navy, Air Force, or equipment. It's all gone over to Ukraine. I think we got to look hard before we start changing. Regardless of how bad he is, we certainly need him to protect us in case of war. So I want to leave you with that one. But now the other one, I'd like the listeners to help me on this one. I've been battling this one for about 7 years, trying to get a flag put back up on top of the bandstand in the public gardens. 7 years there's been no flag, and I've been I'm on the board down there and was on the board with the public gardens group, and we've been fighting, but I don't know what's wrong. Why we can't? For maybe 100 years there's been a flag there. So I'm hoping your listeners will get the message and help me to get to this year, get a flag finally back up there, because there's no excuse if it's on there for 100 years or more. What do you think?
Maybe somebody out there has a solution for you, Bill. Appreciate your time, sir. Have a great weekend.
Good man. Thanks.
902-405-6000. Maybe somebody can help Bill get a flag on the bandstand at the public garden. Public service here on the Todd Veinotte Show. We're going to stop and take our first break here on the Friday Free for All, but don't fret. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Lines are open. 902-405-6000 is the number. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Aalders. This is the Friday Free for All. 902-405-6000 is the number. A couple of lines. We'll try to get to as many calls as we can. The lines are busy today. Let's welcome Gloria to the show. Gloria, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. Great day out there.
It is.
Another great day coming tomorrow,
yes,
so enjoy
ma'am.
it.
I'm going fishing.
This is your I was going to say it's your octogenarian hour, but an octogenarian is between 80 and 90.
I was going to say you're much more seasoned than that.
And Bill's 95, and
right.
I'll be 94 in a little over a month. So
Goodness
you're dealing
gracious.
with the real old crowd today. Anyway,
seasoned
my
veterans.
call,
I don't like the word old, Gloria. I like seasoned veterans.
No, seasoned.
Yes, I like it.
Old is only age is only a number. Anyway, I want to talk about the great Dartmouth General Hospital this morning.
For sure.
You hear Dr. John talking about how busy it is. I had to send my nephew there yesterday. He came to my house. I called the ambulance. From the time he left here at 12:30 till 5 o'clock, 4 other ambulances had passed here going to Dartmouth General. He got down there. He has a bad case of pneumonia.
Oh, my goodness.
Within an hour, he was in a bed. He had all the tests, the X-ray, the blood tests, the CAT scan, everything. And as busy as they are, they were able to take care of him that fast. That's a wonderful hospital down there, Dan.
I hope he's going to be okay.
We have great staff, and you hear so many negative things.
Right.
I wanted to put a positive out there.
There you go. I hope your nephew recovers and is up and around in no time.
I'm sure he will be with their care. But anyway, I just wanted to give them a shout out, and those EHS people are the best.
Gloria, appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too, Dan.
902-405-6000. It's not the first time I can speak from personal experience. I know Todd has spoken about it on this program. After you get through the triage and you get into the healthcare system, my experiences, Gloria's experience, Todd's experience with it. I know Vanessa's had experience with it as well. The level of healthcare that we have in Nova Scotia is second to none. It really isn't. Yeah, it has its challenges. Yeah, there's long waits. Yeah, we need more doctors. But the people that are working here, I think Gloria's right. You know, we probably don't give them the credit they deserve. They are top notch in my experience. In all levels, be it at the emergency room, in the specialties, at the VG, at the infirmary, at the Dartmouth General, and I'm talking too much. Let's go back to the phones and welcome Carl to the program. Carl, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
I'd just like to say cheers to the people that work in the hospital as well.
Oh, very good.
I'm from New Brunswick, from Burton, New Brunswick.
Mm-hmm.
We moved here 41 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to wish best to Todd, Veinotte, and Kelly.
Yep.
And offer condolences to Rick Howe. And I know that's 2 years after the passing.
Yes.
However, I haven't been on the show in 2 years.
Well, Carl, I appreciate the call, and I will definitely pass it along to Todd.
Well, thank you very much.
Have a great day. 902-405-6000. I did get some a little bit. I told him to lose his phone when he was off this week. It's a pretty big week for Todd. I did get some confirmation though from where he is that it actually did happen, and the vows were exchanged, I will say. Congratulations to Todd and Kelly, from Carl, from Vanessa, and from us, and I'm going to throw all of you all in there. I know you're all very happy for Todd. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's go to the phones and welcome Mark to the program. Mark, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
So first, I've known Todd for quite a while, and I want to offer congratulations as well. He first time I dealt with him, he was a producer. Some people might remember the late Tom Young. Anyway, want to say that. Also, it's always good to hear from Gloria.
Yeah.
I always say that I was proudly raised in the city of Dartmouth. She was my mayor growing up.
There you go.
I'm sure she'll appreciate that.
Absolutely.
In terms of the election, just wanted to touch on that.
Yep.
I can't remember what the caller's name was earlier. That was saying, why would you switch all of a sudden? Trudeau resigns, Trump comes in. People that despise the Liberals and now are like, okay, I'm going to vote for them now. I sort of get it. So I'm not going to vote Liberal. I am going to vote Conservative. I'm clearly not going to tell anybody how to vote. But I am a little confused because I understand Mark Carney's credentials, Bank of Canada governor, Bank of England. But doesn't this seem a little opportunistic? I'll put that rhetorically for now. I didn't see him, there have been rumors about him possibly, being involved with the party for many years. Also, he was a close, trusted advisor. And, Ronald Reagan once said, famously, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I don't know many people that are better off 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And also look at his cabinet. It's pretty much the same cabinet. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure.
It is a little perplexing. It just seems like people are seeing Mark Carney as some sort of savior. Well, down south, more than 50% saw another man as their savior, and how's that working out? So I'll just leave it at that, and thank you very much.
Have a great day, Mark. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000. I obviously have comments on that, but I'm going to reserve my comments. As I said, I would try to do, as this is the Friday free-for-all, and that is what we're going to try and stick to. We've got a couple of calls, we've got lots of calls. I want to try to get to a couple more before we get to the news at the bottom of the hour. Let's welcome Rodney to the program. Rodney, how are you?
I'm doing good. Dan, how are you?
It's Friday. I'm doing pretty good.
Excellent. Beautiful day. Yeah. I'm not understanding how this UARB or whatever it's called now, I think they changed their name maybe, but I'm not understanding how they get a gas price.
Me either.
For instance, we just had a drop in the price of oil, $6 2 days ago.
Right.
$5 again yesterday.
Yep.
That's $11 drop in a barrel of oil.
Right.
In 2 days, and yet this morning we wake up and we're up 2.5 cents.
Yeah. I said it off the top of the show.
Doesn't make any sense at all to me.
I said it off the top of the show this morning, Rodney. You probably didn't hear it, but I'm the same opinion you are. I was shocked to see the gas went up, and it's not just that it's
absolutely,
and it's not like it's just here, right? Like I look at jurisdictions across the country that are unregulated jurisdictions, and their prices are going down today, and ours is up. It's perplexing.
It certainly is, and I call it nickel and dime. They nickel and dime us to death, and that's I really hope that either you or Todd, and by the way, congratulations to Todd and Kelly, and my congratulations to Todd, and my condolences to Kelly for having to put up with him. But anyway, so seriously, congratulations to both of them.
Fair enough.
But I'd like to hopefully get either you or him, get somebody of this UARB and explain how they come up with a price, because it's really starting to, these nickel and dimes are really add up over the year.
They certainly do, Rodney. Hey, I appreciate your call. Have a great Friday.
Yes, you have a great Friday too, Dan.
902-405-6000 is the number, and I will say that we have in the past talked to the UARB about how they come together with their calculation. There's a formula on their website, and they're not the UARB anymore. I think it's the Nova Scotia Energy Board is the proper name. It changed on the 1st of April. It'll be the UARB for a long time here. That all being said, maybe now that they don't have as much responsibility, at least the Energy Board, then maybe they will be a little bit more transparent in the way that they come about this price. I've been told it's a 7-day average on oil, but oil is not the only factor. There's the wholesale price for gasoline, and there's a whole list of factors. We, God rest his soul, used to have George Murphy on here who somewhat understood the way that it worked, but we've tried to have experts come on here and do predictions like we used to do, but when they get into the nuts and bolts of how the regulation system works in Nova Scotia, they're all very leery of trying to figure it out. So maybe with this change to and splitting energy off from the other things that the UARB was doing gives them more time to maybe make this a little bit easier for Nova Scotians to understand. But I'm with Rodney. I woke up this morning fully expecting to see gas. In fact, I waited to gas up today because I thought it was going to go down based on exactly what he said. And lo and behold, it went up. So I'm in the same boat as you are and most of Nova Scotians are. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here before we have to take a break and welcome Dave to the program. Dave, how are you?
Yes, Dan. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Boy, you'll never be out of business, you journalists, with Trump in the conversation. It's been ongoing.
Wow.
You will never have a shortage of high blood pressure and call-ins, that's for sure. So,
okay, cool. What's on your mind?
There is a spin-off with that. Well, on my mind, it's going to be curious to see what these 77 cruise ships that come in our harbor. I think there's 77. That's a lot. And they're mostly Americans with their greenbacks they're going to be spending in Halifax. I wonder what the response of folks are. I know we're a little disgruntled with our American friends. And another thing I'd like to know about our Yarmouth Ferry. I mean, we're relying on the Americans to come up here. Of course, we're going to ding them, I guess, on the Cobequid Highway up there. Is that the Cobequid I'm thinking about?
I think it's commercial. I think that's just commercial. I might be wrong, but I think that's just commercial vehicles, like trucks.
Let's hope so. I think we got to be friendly to our American friends because they do bring in, for the Harbor Hopper, the Peggy's Cruise.
Three and a half. I hate to cut you off, Dave, but we got some stats this morning. That last year in 2024, Nova Scotia saw 2 million visitors, and that's just not Americans. That's across the board. $3.5 billion in revenue.
Wow. Can I hang on for just a second? But if you want to get to somebody else, that's cool too. I understand you got a lot of people on.
Yeah, let's. Hey, Dave, if I stick you on hold, we'll get to the news break and we'll come back. How's that?
I'd appreciate that, Dan. Cheers. Thanks.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Vanessa's yelling at me. We need to take a break. News is next. The Friday Free-For-All continues on the other side. See you in minutes. Welcome back. This is the Friday Free-For-All on the fabulous Friday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I almost forgot where I am. I'm Dan Aalders. It's been a long week. We had Dave on the air before the break, and he's back on after the break. Dave, appreciate your holding. Continue your thoughts, please.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for waiting for me or me waiting for you. I appreciate it. So I would say if you think of it, Trump and the U.S. is kind of not meddling exactly, but they're going to influence our election here very possibly from the looks of it. And I know we complain about China, Russia meddling in other elections. So I think I have to echo, I think it was Mark, we have to sort of gain our thoughts here and think about what's happened to this country over the last 10 years, maybe even the last 4. And Trump is obviously affecting that. But and another thing, you may look at the Canadian dollar. That's going up. So there is some positives. as far as that goes.
Yeah,
so,
but it literally was during the break. I was watching an economist saying the Canadian dollar is up, but it's not based on anything that the Canadian economy is doing. It's just because the American dollar is taking such a hit. So
well,
I don't know how long
bad
landing. Well, no, I get it, David. I agree, and I'm not trying to argue with you, but it's not.
No.
It's not because we countervailed or anything else. It's purely based because the American dollar is taking a kind of a beating today.
Dan, I'm just trying to put a positive spin on things.
I understand.
And, when it comes to the market as well, we've seen our market go down with COVID and what have you. It'll bounce back. There'll be things. And here's the thing with the next Prime Minister. Maybe now is the time that we should be flirting with bringing in investors in Canada. We can say, well, this is what they're doing down there. We are not going to tariff you. Bring your factories here. Bring whatever it is that we need into our country. Drop sticky regulations and stupid taxes and really promote business, large business in this country. I mean, you're seeing, I think I understand, doctors coming from the U.S. There was something on your news channel. So, there's opportunity here as well, right?
I get it.
Make Absolutely. Let's look at the positive spins of this, right? We're going to be okay.
Dave, I appreciate it. Have a fantastic weekend.
I appreciate it, Dan, and you too, sir.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. Where are we here? Let's go to James. James, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Yes, I'm calling to echo the sentiment that was expressed earlier that once you get into the healthcare system, if you're in need, the care is terrific, and they work. They are both excellent at their jobs and humane in treating you as a human being.
Right.
But of course, the trick is to get through the door, and that's not up to the people, those wonderful nurses and doctors inside the system. It's up to the politicians and bureaucrats outside the, shall we say, care system, the hospitals.
Understood.
Very briefly, a personal story, only 60 seconds, but we're coming up to Easter. 7 years ago, Easter Sunday, I walked into the Cape Breton Regional Hospital, had a terrible headache. I don't get headaches. The emergency doctor on duty said, your brain is bleeding out. He did a quick CT scan. I'm putting you on life flight to Halifax. And I had surgery at 2 a.m. on Easter Monday.
Holy smokes.
And I was fine by 8 a.m. Miraculous. I would have died.
Holy.
True story.
Wow. Well, we're glad you're still here, James, and we're glad that you shared that with us. I appreciate your time. Have a great weekend.
But you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
System,
yep.
It works. Thanks.
All right, James, I appreciate it. And it's frustrating for me when I am at the doctor or at the hospital or wherever else, and I see some of the frustration, and I get it. I understand the frustration out there. I really do. It's waiting for 14 and 16 hours is almost inhumane. Well, it is inhumane. That being said, it's not the nurse or the doctor's fault. I mean, it's the system's fault, and that anger should be directed towards our MLAs and to our MPs and to our politicians. I've said it here before. I'll say it again that Janet Hazelton and the nurses in this province have every reason to be as cranky can be with the hours that they're working and the understaffing and everything else. But when you are in that system and you're in their care, it's top notch. It is. You're not going to get any better service anywhere in the world. Just saying that. All right, let's get back to the phones. I'm talking again. Kathy, how are you?
I am well, thank you, Dan. Great show, whether it's you or Todd at the helm. Just a frustration that I'll pose in the form of a question.
Sure.
With the burn restrictions. Can someone explain the rationale between having to wait till 2 p.m. to, when the winds have picked up, and now all of a sudden you learn that you can burn? You don't know whether to start preparing things and getting ready,
and
because
Kathy,
you have to wait for that magic hour.
I'll take it another step further, and maybe somebody can explain it that's listening out there. But I'd like to know what the science is that makes it safer to burn at 7 o'clock rather than 2.
Exactly. The winds are always heavier at towards the middle end of the day.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me at all, other than, are we waiting for them to wake up, or
I've railed against this policy. I get it. I understand it. Understand burn restrictions. Understand it's dry. I think we all do. But the arbitrary time of 2 p.m. it doesn't really even make any sense to me.
Yeah, and the other comment would be it's hard to respect the restrictions if they're ludicrous.
Right.
And I do respect them, so I don't want to get into a dialogue about the fires and everything. I don't burn, but I just don't understand the 2 p.m. or 7 p.m. rationale. But anyway, great show, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000. If there's somebody out there that is knowledgeable in that, I'd love to hear it, because as you know, and I think I've even said it a couple times today, I spend a lot of time on the weekends in the woods, and I think I can speak for many anglers out there that there is nothing that is better than a fresh caught piece of trout that is cooked over a campfire at lunchtime when you're out fishing. And you can't do that in Nova Scotia unless you delay your lunchtime until 2 o'clock. And then that's only if it's a green day. And you don't know that until 2 o'clock. So you come off the lake expecting to be able to cook your lunch, and then you look at your phone if you have cell service, and then it's a yellow day and you have to wait till 7 o'clock. I ended up bought a stove because I was done trying to wait and figure things out. But it's certainly unique, and in other places I've been, it hasn't been like that there. Anyway, again, talking too much, Dan. 902-405-6000. Shelley, welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. What's on your mind today?
Oh, well, I'm going to just reinnovate the two comments you had a little bit prior about the price of gas going up. I didn't notice it because I wasn't out, but I did notice something different yesterday. Yesterday was D-Day, I call it, when we looked at prices. And the funny thing is, I went in the grocery store yesterday, and I noticed the price of milk had gone up about 5 cents or so. I don't know if anybody else noticed it. The cream for the coffee, the same thing. It all went up. Why did that happen on the very day of this tariff thing? It was I found it really strange because these are products that we buy. They're Canadian. Our milk comes from the valley, so there's no tariff excuse with it. And the other thing I noticed too is our apples. If anybody ever noticed that, you go to Giant Tiger, and I really do support them because their prices are cheaper.
And a Canadian company. Yep.
Yeah, and there's not a bag of apples to be bought in Loblaws or Superstore or Sobeys under $10 right now. Everything is 8-something, 9-something. That's for a bag of apples. Mm-hmm. Giant Tiger has their apples same size for $5. Sometimes it's $3.99 and $4.47. It never goes above $5. So for anybody who, and I'm not promoting Giant Tiger, but I'm telling you their prices are a lot better. And I have a feeling that this thing with when things go up, we look at the price of milk. Oh, we blame it on the farmers. We look at the price of apples. We look at the farmers. But you know something? It's not the farmers who are increasing these prices. It's the greedy people of Loblaws and Sobeys. They make millions every year in profit, but they're still charging more and more for it. So these are the people you got to get angry at, not our farmers or our producers, because Loblaws and Sobeys are just increasing these prices continuously.
Shelley, great call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and can I mention one other thing?
Sure, very quickly.
Sometime down the road or in the past, you've had a lady on from Yarmouth, and she has a lot to do with the fisheries. If you ever go in the grocery store again, if you go in the weekend, take a look. There's not a can of tuna to be bought in any store that isn't produced in Taiwan or Vietnam.
Right.
Tell me why.
Great question.
Well, yeah, and it's crazy. And all the production of seafood we have off our coast, 5 kilometers down the road, you mean to tell me I can't buy a can of tuna that's locally produced? See, the thing is, we don't protest enough. What we need is a manufacturer, a fishing plant, to can the damn stuff so that I don't have to buy something from Vietnam or to Thailand. If you want to, take a look at Marketplace. I follow Marketplace because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do trust Marketplace. They have journalists who we recognize from our news who do the shows. They did a scan there about a month ago on Marketplace, and they went into, unbeknownst to the manufacturers, went into the products in Vietnam and scanned what they were doing, what they do in Vietnam and Thailand. They used the sewage water from their sewage plant to clean their factories. That's what we're getting in our cans of tunas from Thailand and Vietnam.
Appetizing.
It just drives me crazy. So why can't we, if we can have so much fish off our coast that we're shipping overseas, why can't we have a canning plant right here to make the damn stuff so I don't have to buy something from Vietnam?
Shelley, I can't argue your points.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. 902-405-6000. The only thing that I can see to her very first point is that dairy, we know, and Sylvain Charlebois rails on it all the time, is under supply management. And the 1st of April was intertwined in with all of this crazy this week. And that might have been the date that that milk went up. I don't know if that's true or what, but it would make sense that with, because everything happened April 1st, right? We saw minimum wage and taxes and everything else change. Maybe April 1st was the price increase, but any increase this time of the year and in these economic conditions is certainly going to be not well welcomed. We still have 15 minutes left of the Friday free-for-all. We're going to take our last break. There's a couple of lines open if you want to get on, talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. They're there for you. The number's 902-405-6000. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Friday Free-for-All is upon us. 902-405-6000 is the number. Vanessa said she took a call during the break from somebody in the know with regards to the fire restrictions, and I wanted to know what the science was between the 2 o'clock and the 7 o'clock, and maybe you don't know what we're talking about. That's the burn safe map. If you log on and you see it and it's green, then you can burn safely, of course, after 2 o'clock. If it's yellow, which it is most of the time, that's not till 7 o'clock. And if it's red, you just can't burn at all. And burning is illegal until 2 o'clock. That's the genesis of it. I've always wondered what the science is between 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Vanessa said somebody called up and said the 7 o'clock number is there because volunteer firefighters are at home at that time of the day, and should they be needed, it's an easier response time in the rural parts of Nova Scotia. Don't know if that's the entire reason why, but that is what they are telling us. So we pass it along to you. Shirley's on the line with us. Shirley, how are you?
Good, Dan. You're doing a great job.
Thank
Love
you.
it. Burn ban. Between 12 and 2 is the hottest part of the day.
Okay.
Okay? And at night, the wind, it backs off. It's called backing off. The wind usually dies down in the evening.
Okay.
Those are the two things that I know about why those times are like they were.
Why can't we burn at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Don't have that answer, but I know
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Shirley. I'm really not. It just it's bizarre being an outdoorsman. If I'm staying out in the woods overnight, right, and I want to get up in the morning and cook a cup of coffee, I can't. So I don't understand it. And maybe outdoorsy stuff isn't as popular here it is in other places I've been, but I know there's a lot of people that like to camp, right, and like to camp on Crown land. So it just is counterintuitive. I've solved it. I bought a stove. I bought a backpacker stove, and I'm all set.
There you go. You solved your problem.
Got it. What's on your mind?
Okay. The other thing was the gas prices.
Yep.
I have a routine that I do every week, and I've got everybody at my work sending me. I Google at 3 o'clock the day before on a Thursday. I Google, is the gas going up or down?
Okay.
And then I know on my way home whether it fell up. Yesterday I found out it was going down almost 3 cents, or going up by 3 cents. So I filled up my gas tank. And that is a routine I've gotten myself in, and I just want your listeners to know about it if they don't know. It's better than waking up in the morning and going, damn, the gas went up.
It did. It certainly did.
That's how I do it.
All right. Appreciate that, Shirley.
No problem.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.
902-405-6000 is the number, 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Fred to the program. Fred, how are you?
Great, Dan. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Todd and Vanessa, for providing a great show for the little guy to have his voice heard, and hopefully it won't fall on deaf ears to those leaders that are out there. I'm going to be the guy that probably upsets your apple cart in the sense that I'm voting Liberal. I've heard nothing but Conservative this morning, but the reason I'm voting Liberal is because Carney is not a politician. Carney is an economist, and I think that's what Canada needs right now for at least the next 4 years. I've liked his policies that he's come out. I liked his promises that he has made. They're reasonable. They're not unreasonable. And he's acting very prime ministerial right now, and he's led the Liberal policy back to the center. Now, if you'd asked me 3.5 months ago if I was going to vote Liberal, it would have been a hell no. So that was my 2 cents for you, Todd. Or, sorry, Dan.
Fred, appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, bye.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. It seems that our tuna discussion has raised some interest. We welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
All good, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
We used to have a tuna plant in St. Andrews. They're up in western New Brunswick there.
Yep.
But I believe they shut it down. I could be wrong on this, but I believe they shut it down was because to can tuna, they use a smaller size tuna.
Right.
And when you get the tunas off our coast, the big stakers, and we do a great thing with sports fishermen to get our tuna, which sells for big dollars in the States, right?
That was my Mike, that was my understanding, is that it was more lucrative for the commercials or even the recreational fishermen to sell their tuna into the Japanese market for sushi rather than to grind it up into tuna. That was my understanding.
Yeah, and that's what I believe. And to bring, let's say a tuna boat gets a full load, well, he has to sail from down south somewhere to come up to Canada to can it. So it's easier to take it to Vietnam or wherever. Now, if there's the water issue, well, then I think the government should be stepping in and saying, if you're going to sell it to us, fix the water problem.
100%.
So anyway, I'm a Liberal, and we'll go from there, and you guys have a good weekend.
Have a good one, Mike. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. The last word today goes to Joe. Joe, how are you?
Hey, Dan. What's up, man?
Nothing. You?
I wouldn't say nothing, but
it's been a week, we'll say. How's that?
Yeah. It's definitely been that for sure.
What's on your mind?
I can echo your words, dude. I worked down in Sambro for years, and the tunas, when they come in, like, they have to be tagged. So like halibut that comes in there, hake, haddock, whatever. Tuna is the only thing that has to be licensed to bring in, and these things are huge.
Yep.
Like I've seen tuna that are 900 pounds.
Yep.
I think the record in is like 1,500 in the world, and was caught off our shores here. So when we got tuna in, there'd be a guy that came in, and he was from the States, and he would grade the tuna. And they used this tool to bore into the tuna that he would take the meat, look at it, grade it, and all of our tuna, all of them, went to the States. Overseas.
To Japan for the sushi market.
Yeah. And I mean, tuna is the densest meat that you can, I've seen like swordfish come in, they're 600 pounds, and they're twice the size of a 600-pound tuna.
Yeah.
It is incredible, the tuna market. I'm not even sure I understand it, to tell you the truth. But the meat is just more valuable. it's worth more money. So whoever is buying it, and Dan, like the crate that ships the tuna, the way we ship it, the crate is worth like $300.
Yeah. No, it's super valuable. I get it. And I watched a show on it. I think it was at a PEI. I watched a show once, and the value of that fish every time it leaves here and it goes to Japan and they cut it, and then anyway the value quadruples or 5 or 6 times more.
Yep.
It's a very lucrative market. Joe, I appreciate the call, man. We're just out of time. All right, have a great weekend.
Okay, Dan, you take care, man, and tell Todd congrats.
We'll do that. Joe, I appreciate it. 902-405-6000 is the number. We'll reopen those telephone lines on Monday. My favorite hour of the week by far. Anyway, very quickly before we go to break, I got this from Councillor Hensby in my email box. I know I don't read emails, but this one is kind of important. We've talked about this before. The Lower Sackville Arena is in the running for Hockeyville, Craft Hockeyville 2025. That's a $250,000 prize. And they also get an NHL exhibition game here. Now, the voting opens today. It opened at 10 o'clock. It closes tomorrow, April 5th at 6. So it's open from now until 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Hockeyville.craftheinz.com. It'll get you where you need to go. Hensby says it. I'll back it up. Voting is unlimited. Vote often. Going to stop down and take a break. The show continues on the other side. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Back in minutes. Good afternoon. Welcome back to The Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Ahlstrand along with you. My thanks to each and every one of you that took time out of your day and dialed the numbers and joined the program. That open hour certainly is my favorite hour of the day, and I know it is for you too. And we'll have to maybe take that tact a little bit more. It's nice to hear a variety of voices on a variety of different subjects. We did touch on tariffs a little bit. We did touch on Trump a little bit. We did touch on government's rule changes and such during the open hour. And it has been a week that has featured an awful lot of that stuff. If you can remember, and it feels like it was about a month ago, the 1st of April was this week, and it wasn't April Fool's Day, or maybe it was for some, but there was a bunch of things that happened in Nova Scotia as a result of it being April 1, and I imagine that has something to do with fiscal years. That being said, we saw the HST reduced by a point. We saw minimum wage increased by 50 cents an hour, and we saw the small business tax lowered by a percentage point, I do believe. All of those having impacts on a number of businesses in and around HRM and Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. And then we had the tariffs on top of everything else. It's been a week, as I've been saying many times today. Please welcome to the program the Vice President of Atlantic Canada for Restaurants Canada, Janick Cormier. Janick, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, wow. It's been a week, hasn't it?
It's been a week, yeah. I was just listening to you go over what happened in the last 2 days, and you're right. It feels like a month ago, but it was only a couple days ago.
So let's start with the government stuff, and the biggest one I would assume on the restaurant owners in our part of the world was a 1% drop in HST, and of course that 50 cent an hour increase in minimum wage. Let's start with the drop in taxes and the small business tax. I would imagine any kind of lower taxes is good news for restaurant owners in our part of the world.
Oh, absolutely. We're very pleased to see the government deliver on their election commitment of lowering the small business tax rate as well as upping the threshold. That will help a lot of our independents. That's for sure. Lowering the HST by 1%, I'm not sure that'll have much of an impact on people deciding to go out to eat, but lower taxes is always welcome. But then on the offset, that minimum wage increase is the first of 2 this year. Right. And our industry is very labor intensive. And so we are going to be hit pretty heavily by especially that second hike in October that we're expecting. So that is creating a bit of worries amongst our members, that's for sure.
When we see a 50 cent increase in minimum wage, and then I think in October it's 80 cents. You know, I've been told that restaurant margins are pretty thin these days. Are restaurants able to absorb that, or as a result of these increases, do we as consumers at the restaurant see the menu prices go up?
Yes. So, the entire hike will be $1.30. It's historic. We do appreciate that there is an affordability crisis that is actually getting exacerbated by this whole tariff war threat, it's on, it's off, the chaos. We totally understand that. The reality is that, unfortunately, 53% of restaurants are currently either operating at a loss or barely breaking even today. So any additional costs will have repercussions. Costs to operate a restaurant have gone up 24% in the last 2 years. So just, your rent, your insurance, the price of food. We've all been grocery shopping. We've all seen a bit of sticker shock in the last few years, and our restaurant owners aren't they also face the same rise of costs. And so on top of all of this, seeing a big minimum wage hike like that in an industry where we need a lot of people in order to operate a restaurant is going to make it difficult. So I do expect that a lot of our members will have to adjust their prices. But on the other hand, we're also very aware that consumers are also tightening up their wallets and not spending as much. So it's a bit of a perfect storm. And that's why when this minimum wage hike was introduced, announced, I should say, we had a few asks. The first thing was to lower the small business tax rate. So they've done that. That's great news. But another thing they could do is we've had success in Manitoba, Newfoundland, and Labrador with a minimum wage subsidy program to help the transition for small business owners. And so we would really like to see something like that in Nova Scotia as well.
53%? Really? That's
53%.
Wow.
It's huge. That was it was 12% in 2019.
Holy.
The reality is we've never recovered from the pandemic. And so a lot of our members, we're hoping to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But unfortunately, with this whole economic uncertainty and the chaos that President Trump has created, we're very aware that the first thing off a family's budget in hard times is restaurant outings. And so spending is down, foot traffic is down, but our expenses keep going up. And so it's created a situation where a lot of our members are struggling to make ends meet.
So 1 out of every 2 restaurants, as I walk down Main Street, I'm putting quotes around that, here in HRM is either working at a loss or just at break even. That can't be sustainable.
It's absolutely not sustainable, and this is one of the reasons. One of our big asks during this federal election to all major parties is to make HST removal off restaurant meals permanent. We had a bit of a pilot project with that and from December to February, where we saw actually Nova Scotia was the best results out of all of Canada for creating jobs and increased spending. And so it's just basic economics. Lower the price of something, people will consume more of it, right? And so for us, food is food no matter where it comes from. And so removing the tax on restaurant meals would help entice people to go out maybe a little bit more, get that dessert they would normally go without or that appetizer. So measures like that could help the industry. Measures like that minimum wage subsidy that we're asking for would also be helpful to help us just survive these next few months and hopefully to get to a point where we can eventually thrive again as an industry.
You mentioned dessert, you're making me hungry.
It is lunchtime.
It is. The labor situation. You mentioned that you're very labor intensive in restaurants. I think we can all appreciate that. That being said, we heard the stories of it being next to impossible to find people to work. Is that still the case?
It's still the case. Currently, there are 78,000 jobs available in our industry throughout the country. It's been difficult to find staff, and especially in what we call the back of house position. So this is the cooks, the chefs, etc. These are positions that you need some training to do, and that are paid higher than minimum wage. for the most part. I'm sure, don't quote me on it, everybody who pays more than minimum wage, I'm sure you'll find one person who's getting paid minimum wage somewhere, but for the most part, they're well-paying jobs, but these are skilled trades, right? And so it's very hard to fill these positions. Front of house, we have less problems. A lot of students like to serve or bartend, and they have access to that deeply loved tip money. But yes, we are facing a labor shortage. I think there's a labor shortage in basically every industry across the country, but because we need more people to run our businesses, we are being hit pretty hard at the moment.
How about the tariffs? So you mentioned the tariffs. Obviously, they're top of mind of everybody. I know the restaurant industry isn't directly tariffed, but I imagine indirectly it's impacting supply chains and those kind of things.
No, absolutely. So our supply chains are very integrated with the United States. We were very pleased to see that the reciprocal tariffs announced on Wednesday, or yesterday, I should say, did not include tariffs on food. Tariffs on food would increase the cost of operating a restaurant tremendously. However, the steel and aluminum tariffs are still having an impact on our industry. Any dishwasher or sink or anything that has steel and aluminum is now costing 25% more. So some of our members are, putting some renovations for the future. Maybe they'll put up with the old dishwasher a little bit longer, but some of them have no choice. They if the equipment stops working, they need to replace it, right? And so I've heard from some members that they're seeing a significant increase in cost for that kind of thing. And then there's the whole chaos and uncertainty and people not really wanting to spend a lot of money because they don't know what's going to happen to the economy, how much more goods will cost. We're already facing an affordability crisis before all of this, so this is just exacerbating it more. We've heard anecdotally from members that since that HST holiday has ended, foot traffic has declined again, spending has declined. And so, in a time of uncertainty and in a time where people start tightening their belts, all the research shows that the first thing off the budget is your restaurant outings or your takeout. And so we're already in a tough time. We're already having a hard time making ends meet, and this is adding to it and creating a perfect storm for probably a lot of closures coming.
Janick, I appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Janick Cormier, the Vice President, Atlantic Canada for Restaurants Canada. Huge game tonight at Scotiabank Centre. The Halifax Mooseheads not down, they're tied, but they've lost their first two at home. Tonight, the last home game of the first round of the playoffs against the Drummondville Voltigeurs. What does it all mean? Garreth MacDonald, our play-by-play announcer, will be joining us to give us a bit of a preview of the action tonight. Right after the break, you're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes.
Thanks.
Well, it's Friday afternoon. The finish line is just out of reach, isn't it? It's almost there. In fact, looking at my window here onto Roby Street, it looks like the traffic is starting to thin out a little bit. Maybe people are going to work from home for the afternoon. Maybe some are going home to get rested up so that they can pack up the car and head down to the Scotiabank Centre tonight. It's going to be rocking there, I can tell you that, because our Halifax Mooseheads are back on the ice tonight. They're facing the Drummondville Voltigeurs in the pivotal Game 5 as this playoff series continues. Both teams with 2 wins. Tonight's winner, I guess, will have just get your book of cliches out, right? And I know our next guest has that book handy, and that is Garreth MacDonald. Garreth, how are you?
Are you saying I rely heavily on cliches?
No, not at all. You always give it 110%.
Well, I do my best.
Is your back against the wall yet? No, anyway, we're digressing here. Garreth is, of course, the voice of the Halifax Mooseheads here on 95.7 News Radio. And I mentioned it off the top of the show, Garreth, that they took you a bit out of your comfort zone this week and put you on TV, at least on a video.
Yeah, I was. I had an opportunity to take part in Moose Tracks, the very well produced Mooseheads behind the scenes show. So that was. It's online. It's on YouTube on the Mooseheads channel. This is actually a pretty cool little feature. They've been doing this the last couple of seasons, working with a small video company here in Halifax called Only Issue, and Ian and Alex, they do an awesome job, and it was kind of cool to have them follow along with me, and also at the same time kind of get to see how they put it all together too. So that was it was a lot of fun for sure.
The magic of radio, right?
The magic of radio, exactly.
Some say
behind the scenes.
At least you're photogenic and you're very warm with the camera. I'm not. I have the face for radio, right? So
don't beat yourself up.
All right, Garrett. I appreciate that, sir. Now let's focus on the matter at hand here. Of course, get your cliches out. As I mentioned, this is a all important game tonight to take control of this series before it shifts back to Drummondville.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the Mooseheads were in a pretty good spot there back on Saturday night with their overtime win on the road at the Marcel Dion Center in Drummondville. They came back 2-0, but at the same time, I think if you were to tell the team, if you were to tell the fan base that they'd be going into Game 5 tied up with the team that finished 38 points up on them in the standings, the team that finished third overall in the league, top of the Western Conference, I think they take that for sure. So I think when we look back to those first couple of games, I mean, the Moose, they played a gritty brand of hockey. It was playoff hockey. They were fantastic right from the get-go in both of those games on the road in Drummondville. And I think so far, maybe shifting back to home ice in front of the big crowd there, the home crowd, maybe a little bit of nerves if you look back to Game 3. And I don't think that the team has really found its game, the same game that they were able to have in Drummondville, the style of play that gave them success. But I guess the silver lining when you look back at those last couple of games is that despite that, they had a chance to win both of those games. Both games were 1-goal games late in the third period. So, I mean, you get a bounce, and who knows? I mean, they could have had it wrapped up by this point as well with some fortuitous luck. But again, I think at this point, what we've seen so far in Halifax, it hasn't been the Mooseheads' best game, but they've got another crack at it here tonight to try to put on a show in front of the fans.
Jacob Steinman has been outstanding for all of this series and has kept Halifax, particularly in Game 4, in the game with some stellar play.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Steinman has been he's been ridiculous here I guess put it lightly. I mean, a .941 save percentage through his first 4 games. That performance on Wednesday night was just remarkable. 51 saves, 4th most in franchise history. I mean, he was incredible. So again, you talk about getting the bounce going your way. Obviously, he was just a massive part. The biggest reason the Mooseheads had a chance to win Game 4, and certainly he performed the same way through those first couple of games that led to victories on the road in Drummondville last weekend. So yeah, I mean, you just can't say enough good things about him. We know it's been just such a rocky season for him. It was a bit of a roller coaster of emotion. Again, a guy that went into this year thinking that he would be a big part of a Moncton Wildcats team that had its eyes on the Memorial Cup, and he gets dealt to a rebuilding Mooseheads team back in early January. But I can't say enough good things about just the mental strength of him, the maturity, and I mean, just his commitment to the team. He's really bought into the program here with the Mooseheads, and quickly became a leader in that dressing room. And again, not just in the dressing room, but obviously he's been leading here on the ice as well. He's been their best player, and again, can't say enough great things here about Jacob Steinman and his play.
How the Herd looking injury-wise heading into Game 5 tonight?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's the playoffs, so there's a few battle wounds for sure. I think there's I know I saw after those first couple of games on the road in Drummondville, a lot of ice packs being passed around. The Mooseheads did lose a couple of their rookies back early on in the series back in Friday night in Game 1. They lost Justin Chiras, rookie defenseman out of Bedford, New Hampshire, who joined the team back in early January. He's been a great addition for them, real reliable defensive defenseman, just 17 years old. Is a lot of upside there. I think the future pretty bright for him, but yeah, tough to see him go down. He took a big hit early on in the first period on Friday, so won't expect him to be back tonight. Will Bent, same thing. He got banged up in the second period of Game 1. Another rookie out of the U.S. who not likely to play tonight, but again, I guess we'll get an official word on those guys later on today. Eddie Doyle, he got injured late in the season, and again, his return here in the playoffs certainly up in the air right now. But again, for the most part, it is it's a fairly healthy group outside of Chiras and Bent, who obviously won't be available. But with them out, that's led to other opportunities for guys like Cade Moser, who have drawn back in the lineup. We saw Ryan Fletcher called up from the Maritime Junior A League. He was an affiliate for 4 games during the regular season. He should be back in the lineup here today for a third straight game.
Game time tonight, 7 o'clock. Everything starts right here on 95.7 News Radio at 6:30 with the Mr. Lube pregame show. Garreth MacDonald will bring you all of the action tonight, and the series shifts back to Quebec to Drummondville. Was it Tuesday, Wednesday next week?
Monday, Tuesday.
Okay,
Monday,
Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday and Tuesday, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Moose will have it all sewn up by Monday night.
We'll have to wait and see and get all our gear on and get down there and be loud and be proud. I expect a big crowd tonight.
Absolutely. Now, Friday night, it should be great. Again, really looking forward to it. This team, a lot of heart that they've shown so far, and should be a good one tonight.
Garreth, is always my pleasure, sir, and have a great call, and we'll chat next week.
The pleasure is all mine, Dan. Take care, okay?
That is Garreth MacDonald, our play-by-play announcer. Again, if you missed it, 6:30 tonight, the Mr. Lou pregame show. Puck drops at 7 o'clock. Get out the cliche book. Their backs against, you name it, 110%. It's a good team over there. We're going to do our best and so on and so forth. Game 5 is massively important. If they could head into Drummondville with a 3-2 series lead with the quote-unquote stranglehold, then everything is different, right? But they'll need your support. They'll tell you to a person that they feed off the crowd at Scotiabank, and but if you can't get there, or you're heading there, catch the pregame show at 6:30. If you can't get there, all the action live right here on 95.7 News Radio. Going to take a break. What's the weather going to do this weekend? You heard my thoughts on it, but we're going to bring the expert in after. Aalders Aalders, our weather guy, is going to be with us. Give us a rundown on the weekend and what we can expect to start next week. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Back in a minute. You can imagine when you're getting ready to do a 3-hour talk show every day, and you're going through all of the guests and all of the prep that Vanessa does. So very fantastic job on the other side of the glass. And I'm getting stuff together for different segments and everything else. I go through a lot of information. And when I came across these next nuggets of information, I couldn't wait to talk to Cecil about them because, we love Cecil here, and we know he's our resident sports guru, and we know that he is plugged into the sports community. But when I read a headline this morning that said that the Boston Bruins are on a 10-game losing streak and that the Toronto Blue Jays were leading the American League East this morning, I really couldn't wait to have our discussion today, Cecil.
Oh, boy. You're as bad as Todd. You know that?
How are you, brother?
No wonder why they got you to substitute for him.
It was like, wow, Cecil's got to love that 10-game losing streak in Boston. They could break a record soon.
Well, it's been a tough year for them, and then trading Marchand on top of everything, right. Just kind of, we knew as soon as that happened that they were kind of giving up a shot at even trying for the playoffs. Now I'm just hoping they might as well just lose every game and see if we can't get in the running for a number 1 pick.
Right. Right. It's one of those years, and a number of people in my family are Bruins fans, and it's I'm not going to say that I haven't been sort of happy to see the demise of the Bruins, but it happens. You guys, the Bruins have been good for so long; it was bound to happen, right? It's the same with the Patriots.
It's always cyclical. Montreal went through it, and they're starting to reap the benefits of their ineptitude now.
Right.
They got a nice young team with a lot of very solid young players. The next 4 or 5 years are going to be very prosperous for them, I think. And the other team, I mentioned this to Todd before, the other team that I really like, you're going to laugh at this, other than Winnipeg, is Ottawa.
Right?
Ottawa, they have been shocking me, man. They've got a tough team. There are no easy nights playing against them, and that's just good for the league.
And having Ullmark and nets there probably doesn't hurt, right?
Well, see, there you go again, rubbing it in. And I remember last year in the playoffs, some of the Boston sportscasters were saying, well, you got to get rid of them. You can't have two good goaltenders. You got to trade one. So they traded Ullmark, and then halfway through the season, everybody was down on Swayman, saying that they never should have traded Ullmark in the first place.
Right.
Well, when you've got two, real solid goaltenders, sometimes that's an issue, and I understand why they did it. It's just tough to see him playing so well in that other jersey.
Right, I know, and seeing Brad Marchand, we know he's been injured and such, but just to see him take a skate around in the Florida Panthers red, it just doesn't even look right.
Listen, when they get Tkachuk back,
right?
That's if they get him back this year. He and Marchand are going to give some long nights to some teams, man. Their games are just so abrasive, and they both have good hands though, and are talented in front of the net. Oh, Florida. Oh, why, oh, why? I'd rather, I'm still on, I'd rather have them win it than Toronto bandwagon.
Oh, no. You're swearing now. You're swearing at me, Cecil. Anyway, switching to and I know it's early, switching to baseball, but to see the Blue Jays, and I better get this in now because it isn't going to stay there long, but they're right now on top of the American League East, on top of the Yankees and the Red Sox. So, a lot of people were predicting that the Jays were going to be, and it still might happen, but we're going to be at the bottom of that division, so kind of a surprise, at least at 7 games in.
Well, I don't really put too much stock in it at this early stages of the game. That's like, poor Rafael Devers for the Red Sox went like 0 for 20 or something like that and had 19 strikeouts.
Yeah.
So everybody, they're talking about, well, should we move him? I'm like, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
I remember when he first came up, he went 0 for 13. Sometimes this happens. Players aren't ready at the start. Pitchers are always ahead of the hitters. And plus, the guy had shoulder surgery in the off season, so they delayed him coming back. So he's behind everybody else. You got to give everybody an opportunity to get their timing back. And I'm not just talking about Devers. I'm talking about everybody, except for the New York Yankees, who are hitting home runs like crazy.
Yeah, well, they're using that torpedo bat, right?
Yeah, whatever that is. I haven't gotten a good look at it yet, but I'm gonna.
Right.
It's curious to me, though, Aaron Judge isn't using it. Not that he has to use it anyway. No. But he said that he wasn't changing to it, had no interest in it. He was going to go with what has proven to be successful for him in the past.
Why mess with a good thing, right?
Exactly. Back to your Blue Jays, though.
Yes, sir.
I still think either Bo Bichette or Vladdy's going to be traded.
Well,
you can't let Vladdy walk for nothing.
No, and that's just it. And listening to some of the American coverage of the ongoing situation with the Blue Jays and with Vladimir, everybody's kind of shocked that the Jays aren't opening up the checkbook and giving him the pen and say fill it in. The guy's is a generational all-star and wants to be in Toronto. He wants to be in Toronto, and they're not going to sign. It's awful. It really is. It's almost watching. I've watched a couple of games this year and seen him play and seen him at the plate, and you're like, when he goes, it's just we're going to go back to the way it was, and just the Blue Jays are going to be terrible, and they're not going to get as much support, and you know how the list goes on and on and on.
Well, the thing that really I don't want to say upsets me because I'm a Red Sox fan, but the thing that I question is this guy hasn't even hit his prime yet.
No.
Why are you not just opening the checkbooks and giving him whatever he wants. You know you're going to pack the place for the next, say 5 or 6 years while he's entering and then fully into his prime. I don't understand the thought process there in Toronto. What are they waiting for?
Very quickly before we let you go, Cease, Ovechkin is 3 goals away now, a hat trick away. Is he going to break Gretzky's record this year?
Oh yeah, I think he's gonna. But I'm not the biggest Ovechkin fan in the world. I think that a lot of his goals have come on the power play, which I'm not taking anything from him. But to me, it's what you do 5-on-5 that counts. Having said that, I respect Ovechkin as a hockey player. I just don't like him. He's an abrasive guy too, like Marchand, but he's a lot bigger.
Cecil, have a fantastic weekend, sir, and maybe next week when we chat, the Red Sox will be ahead of the Jays. Who knows?
They will be. They will be. Don't worry about it.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
That's Cecil Wright, our sports guru. We're going to wrap it up very quickly before we do. Again, Hockeyville 2025. Lower Sackville's in the running for this, the arena there. $250,000 and an NHL exhibition game. Voting open now. It's open until tomorrow at 6. Log on to the Hockeyville website. Vote as many times as you can. It's unlimited. And let's hope that we can tip the scales in favor of a worthy arena to see those upgrades. Thanks to Vanessa. Thanks to everybody who called this week. We got to go. Have a fantastic weekend. And remember, be kind to one another.